The British Knockout Championships is currently underway in London. In this game, Michael Adams is playing with the white pieces against Simon Kim Williams, also known as the Ginger GM. This is their second classical game, and the winner of this matchup will advance to the semi-finals of the knockout tournament. Adams opens with e4, his standard move. So Williams plays the Sicilian defense, and we have the open Sicilian on the board. Knight f6 here, knight c3, d6, the classical variation. So here Adams goes for the Richterhauser with bishop to g5. So the moves played here are pretty much still theory. This is a very heavily analyzed variation of the Sicilian. Here bishop takes, g takes, and white played king to b1. Even at this point, we are still in opening theory. So black has a couple of options here. He can play queen to a5, where the queen could also possibly swing over to the king side to help in the defense if necessary. You gotta watch out for moves like knight to d5 here, but it doesn't really quite work for the moment. So here you can also play moves like rook c8, very logical, getting the rook to the open file. Rook b8 also possible to support the pawns. But here we have queen to b6 from Williams, with a similar idea to rook to b8. So white also has many ways to play the position here. For example, he can go f5. He can also go bishop d3, just developing. Rook g1 is also an idea, trying to push g4, g5 and make use of the open file. But here Adams plays knight to e2. Anticipating black to play b4, perhaps with some intention of playing this knight e to d4, trying to provoke black in playing e5. So here knight to a5 played, trying to jump into the c4 square, a very thematic idea in the Sicilian. We have f5 now from Adams. Note that if black doesn't push e5 immediately, then white would have knight to f5. Putting more pressure on e6. And if black goes e5, then you just weaken the d5 square. So William plays knight to c4, attacking the queen, and queen to h6. And now black's king is starting to feel a little bit of pressure. So perhaps Williams didn't fully appreciate the dangers in this position. He played rook to c8. Perhaps he should have played castle's queenside. This was a more practical and safe way to play the position. But rook c8 played. Now Adams takes on e6 and knight to f4, putting more pressure here. So just to illustrate the dangers in black's position, let's say he plays a slow move like a5. Then here white can go queen h5 check, and then knight to d4, piling up on e6. If e5, then knight f6 check. Takes, king d7 is forced, and here bishop to e2, meeting king takes e6 with bishop g4 check, and this is going to be mate. So here black would play knight to e3, trying to defend the square, also attacking the rook. So rook to d3, trying to remove the defender of g4. If king takes, rook takes e3. Here again, queen takes e3 is met with bishop to g4, so king back to d7, bishop g4 check, king d8, maybe just a simple rook to d3. And here black's king is incredibly exposed. White will probably try to play on the light squares in this position, possibly moves like queen to f5, maybe a rook coming to d1 to double on the d-file, and with opposite colored bishops, the attacker often has the advantage because the opposing bishop cannot cover the light squares in this position. So this is quite promising for white. Let's go back. So here after knight to f4, what happens if knight to e3? So here white can actually give up the exchange. He can play bishop d3, this solidifies everything in its position. If knight takes, then you simply recapture. Probably something like this, queen g7, rook to f8, queen takes h7. So black is up the exchange, but you can see that his rooks are split. So his pieces are not very well coordinated. White's pieces, on the other hand, are optimally placed. You can see here the rook puts pressure on this file. So black's king is also more exposed compared to the white king. Here white probably can start thinking about pushing the h-pawn down the board. So after knight to f4, instead of knight to e3, here Williams plays knight takes b2, going for maximum complications. So in this position, we have king takes b2. Black is down a piece, so he must act quickly. So what happens if queen to c5, threatening queen takes c2? So here white can play knight to d4. So defending, also attacking e6. And if here black plays queen to b4 check, then you can play king a1. If queen c3, king b1, check again, then the knight blocks. You can take on e4, but after bishop d3, black's attack is pretty much gone. So going back a few moves, let's say here black plays e5. This loses instantly to queen h5 check. If king d8, then knight to e6. This wins the queen. So after king takes b2, black must act quickly. In this position, Williams played the move d5, trying to open up this bishop. So now white brings the knight to d4. Williams plays bishop to b4, threatening this, bishop c3. So king to b1. And queen to d6, possibly with intentions of going bishop a3 and the queen coming in. But that seems a little too slow. Now what should Adams do in this position? It's clear that he needs more firepower on black's king, so he plays bishop to e2, a very logical move, bringing another piece into the attack. Williams plays e5, and now Adams' pieces are ready to strike. So he has a couple of ways of converting this position. But Adams chooses the simplest way and probably the most risk-free way of ending things. He plays queen to g7, attacking the rook, so the rook comes to f8. Note that if queen f8, then bishop h5, king d8, and now knight lands on e6, knight e6 check, and this is going to be mate. So here queen g7, rook f8, bishop h5 check from Adams, king to d8, and now a very nice tactical shot to finish off the game. Queen takes f8. This simplifies into a winning endgame after queen takes f8, knight e6 check, wins back the queen. So here white is going to be up a full rook. In fact, after queen takes f8, here Simon Williams resigned the game. So with this win, Michael Adams advances to the semifinals of the British Knockout. So I hope you enjoyed this extremely sharp and entertaining game. If you want to support the channel, feel free to subscribe and share this video. Thanks for watching and see you soon.